Hello everyone and welcome to this video. And in this video, we will be adding two integers read from the keyboard and printing out the results. So the key, takeaway from this video is that we will be doing that with the technique called pass by address. And what pass by address is honestly a way of changing the values inside of a variable. And the way that you do that is you pass the address of the variable inside of a function, and then that function is able to take that address and ultimately change the value inside of it. If that sounds complicated, it's really not. And as we go through this code, you can see how essentially easy it is. So as you can see in the code, we have two functions that we declared, one called getData and another one called add. So getData, as you can see on line 7, essentially gets two integer pointers in its parameters. So it gets two integer pointers, and the add function just gets two integer values. And that is a key important distinction to understand, that in order to pass by address, you essentially, like I said, have to pass the address of the variable into a function, right? And that is what a pointer is. A pointer is nothing but a pointer just holds the address of a variable, right? It points to the location of a variable inside of a function, and that is what an address is, right? So that is a key distinction. But we have those two functions declared up top, and inside of your main function, we have essentially three variables, three integer variables, a, b, and sum. And on line 18, you can see that we called the getData function. And inside of the getData function, we pass in the addresses of a and b. And I want you to pay attention to the ampersand symbols next to a and b. So that indicates, to the compiler, that we are passing in the addresses of these variables, not just the values of these variables. So C is passed by value, meaning that once you call a function and you pass the values inside of a function, what it does is it makes a copy of those values and then passes it into the function, and whatever the function does, it returns the value or not, but that is what happens. It makes a copy of the value of the variable, right? And then it passes that value inside of the function, and that is essentially what happens. But in this case, we are passing the address of that variable into the getData function. So if you scroll down, you can see in the getData function that let's just first cover the the function definition. And you can see we have the getData name, and then we have its parameters, and inside of the parameters we have two integer pointers, right? And these are going to be pointing to the location of the variables inside of memory, which is the same as the address of the variable, right? And you can also notice another distinction inside of the way that we use these values in the scanf function. So typically in a typical scanf function, the way that you do it is once you write the scanf function, you write the type of data that you're going to be receiving. You typically put the ampersand symbol in these locations, right, to indicate that what essentially translates to is take these values and then store them in these address locations, right? That is what the ampersand symbol symbolizes. But we don't have to do that anymore. Why? Because we are already passing into this function the address locations of these variables, right? These are just the address locations. So this is just the name of the address location, and that is why we have it here, and that is why you don't have to put the ampersand symbol when you use the scanf function, because we already have those address locations passed into the function already. So that is a distinction. And the key difference between pass by value and pass by address is pass by address allows you to change the value of the variable anywhere inside of your code. So another function you can pass the address of these variables into another function, and another function can change them as they want. and you don't ultimately have to have everything inside of your main function. But yeah, that's ultimately what happens, and that's ultimately a key distinction between pass by address and pass by value. With pass by value, you can't change the value of the variable, right? Because like I said, it makes a copy of that value and then passes that into the function. But in this case, and because of that, you really can't change the original value inside of that variable, right? All you can just do is just use that value. But pass by address allows you to change that value, and we will go over a few examples after I compile this code. But yeah, that is the main distinction. As a brief overview, pass by address allows you to change the value inside of a variable from any function inside of your code. And the reason that is able to do that is because you are passing in the address of that variable into that function. So since you pass in that address of that variable into that function can ultimately change the value inside of that variable, right? And that is different from pass by value, because the way that pass by value works is the compiler or the code makes a copy of that value inside of that variable and then passes that into the function, right? So because you're just getting a copy, you're really not getting the original, so you really cannot change what is inside of that variable to begin with. So yeah, that is basically it. And I'm going to go ahead and compile this code, and we are going to run through some other examples and see how it works. So compile it again. 1, 2, boom. Okay, so as you can see, I entered 1 and 2 inside of the add function. The add function just takes the values, right, and then prints it out. It's simple enough. And the main function, inside of the main function, we call the get data. So the get data essentially sets the values for these variables, right? And we can change that. So for example, once we collect the data from the user and pass it into the variables, we can do another thing. We can essentially create another function. This is and call it get data or change data. Change data. And all we want to do is say a now equals to 0. Okay, so as you can see, I made another function called change data, and ultimately what I'm doing is I'm trying to change the value inside of the variables, right? So this is the same thing as our get data function, and as you know, we're just passing in the addresses of these variables into the function. But the key distinction of what I'm doing here is I'm changing the values inside of that address location. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm dereferencing. So in order to do that, you have to get to the actual variable, right? Because this is just a pointer to the location. It's just the address of that variable. Now we want access to the actual variable, right? So we can change what is inside of the variable. So the way that you do that is you have to dereference the pointer. And the way that you dereference a pointer is you just put an asterisk next to it, next to the pointer name, and that dereferences the pointer. So this gives us the actual variable. I hope that makes sense. Just take some time to think about it, but it should make sense because we are just given the address of the variable, right? We want to get to the actual variable now, so we dereference the address, which gives us the variable, and then we can change what is in it. So I dereferenced it, and then I set it to 0. So let's just run this and see what happens. So this is what I'm going to do. Okay, so after I get the data, I'm going to change the values to A and B of A and B, and we're going to see what happens. Declaration, okay, perfect. So I had it compiled, so I'm gonna put 1 and 2 again, and it should give us 0. See, because I was able to change the value instead of the variables from anywhere that I want. So yeah, just keep that in mind. When working with pass by address, other functions can change the value of your variables that you declared in one function. So keep that in mind while using pass by address, because with pass by value, I can call A and B, but I'm not really changing the value of A and B inside of the main function, right? Because I'm just making a copy of A and B and passing it in. But in this case, I can change the value of A and B declared inside of the main function because I'm passing the address of A and B. So yeah, we can also change this to 40. So always give us 80 if we need to, just regardless of whatever it is that the user enters. So I could put 1 and 0. 8 and 0 and still get 80, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind, and that's basically how pass by address works. And yeah, I hope you learned something. I hope you were able to take something for this video. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also join my Facebook group that I made just for people to basically contribute and share their ideas and help each other with coding, trying to get better and stuff like that. All of that will be down in the description down below. Also comments, because it helps my channel grow. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you and peace.